Welcome to the It's Better Together podcast, where intelligent conversations turn dreams into action, with hosts Marcy Stout and Allison Nissen. Each episode highlights inspirational women and practical business advice from the Revel Coach Tuesday at 2 live programs. From building a website to securing more clients, we cover topics that are interesting to you.
Allison, I'm so glad we interviewed Jess Williams. I love her story and her confidence to just be a journalist and reach out to people through very conventional ways like Instagram and just saying, hey, what if it works? And
she says it's a privilege to be given a front row ticket to someone's personal journey. She's just the person to send it out to the world. She loves to inspire people, and that's exactly what the world needs. Inspiration. Let's meet Jess.
My biggest surprise to the journey of being a journalist probably would be meeting so many interesting people beyond what I expected. They definitely exceeded my expectations. I set out to be a journalist to cover local stories on local people who had interesting stories within the community. I did not set out to meet people who had a broader spectrum of influence. So that was a big surprise.
Have you had the opportunity to interview anybody super interesting?
I have had the opportunity to interview Leanne E, who inspired the film The Blind Side. And I also have interviewed, he's known as Sean of the South, Sean Dietrich, who is a well-known author, columnist. He also has a podcast, but a lot of folks from the South follow him on various different social media platforms. I interviewed him, and his interview made the front page, surprisingly. I guess the editor was pretty, impressed. I wasn't expecting the front page coverage, but okay. He actually had a little interesting step into the world. He, was not granted the opportunity to go to college or anything like that. And when he did step into a community college classes for adults, or of older adults, I guess, some people told him he should really look into something else other than writing or author, and he got turned down a lot from newspapers and things like that. And so he started his blogging and things like that on social media platforms, and it took off. And so the joke was on all the people that told him he never would. And it was quite interesting to witness that, to talk about it, and he gets really personal in his personal life. But as far as he's written, I believe he's written close to 10 books. He's published them. He's written his, he's been published in multiple magazines by now, and he's quite, popular. He has hundreds of thousands of followers, and so the joke was really on the people who told him you should really look into something else like construction. And so so it was an uplifting story about never give up, and no matter what people tell you. And he didn't, and it was something to see and talk about.
And Jess, as you were writing that story, how did you find the depth to present a story that the editor would be like, this is definitely, front page and something to cover?
Well, I these stories, a lot of them happened by accident. I did tell her who I was writing about. She didn't know who he was. And I said, well, look him up, kind of, this is a link where you can, kind of get a gist of who he is. And I said, he's pretty blunt in that he tells you his challenges in life. Like he was 12 years old when he moved to Florida, and that was right after his father committed suicide. So he that was a big life-changing moment for him, and he had a lot of issues dealing with that. But he is upfront and honest about it, and his followers, have some sort of silent connection with him that we got to talking, he and I got to talking, and it was published in the article that, my grandfather committed suicide as well. And so and then my father died when I was 16. So the loss of a parent at a young age and the loss of a close relative by suicide connected us in a random newspaper article. So it was kind of an establishment of, we're all kind of connected, even though we may feel disconnected, so that was the moral of the story, and kind of, what we hope to, um, share with the readers, who wanted to read the story. So
I find it fascinating that you've been able to meet such interesting people. Walk me through what it's like from beginning to end, from idea to publication, how you go about collecting your information about the stories you're going to write.
Well, this process, and it's not really a process that was written down or really prepared. This process worked for the article on the gentleman in Mobile who built the Black Pearl, and also Leanne E. I both found them accidentally. Well, I didn't find Leanne E. accidentally. I mean, I knew she was, but I never dreamed she would agree to an interview. I had an idea, and I ran it by the Celebration magazine editor, and I said, what if we interviewed Leanne E., about, Mary Poppins, because there's a new Mary Poppins attraction in Disney now. It came out this year, and it's in Epcot. And I said, well, what if we could tie, she loves Disney, she loves Mary Poppins, and, we can kind of figure out how to put it all together. And he goes, I don't know, I'm not sure. I'm not really loving the idea, but and I'm going, what do you mean you're not loving the idea? Like, he's like, I've never seen The Blind Side. And of course I'm thinking, what do you mean you've never seen The Blind Side? He goes, and he literally says, well, my mother's seen it. She thinks it's great. So yeah, go with it and see where we can take it. And okay. And so I don't know if Leanne Tui is going to agree to this or not. So I send her a message on Instagram. Okay. And I follow her on Instagram because she is just a hoot to follow. She's hilarious. And if you've ever followed her or ever seen her post, it's entertaining, to say the least. And I never dreamed, she has so many followers. There's no way she can keep up with them. And And I'd say she probably has, I don't know, maybe close to 100,000 or something like that, some crazy number. And so I sent her a message thinking it will be a miracle if I get a response from this, And I did. I got a response. Not only did I, get a response, which most of them have little assistants, that, respond to fans and questions from, various publications. And so it was Leanne Tui who was responding to me. So wait, you handle your own Instagram account? And she said, yeah, I do it all myself, in her, thick Southern accent. I'm pretty dumbfounded. And she goes, I tell you what, she said, I have an assistant. She handles all my appointments and things. And she said, because I don't do that. I don't do my own bookwork. And she said, I'll give you the email and you can set up a time for an interview, and I don't have a problem with that. I love Disney, and I go there, many times a year, and so this is great. We'll do this. Okay.
It goes to say it's like the worst they can do is say no. So why not ask? Because that's so great.
It is the worst. If you do not have a problem and you get to a point where rejection does not bother you, then you just keep going. You just keep trying, and that's, it kind of reminds me of the Shaun of the South, story that I was talking about earlier. He just kept going. He didn't care, that people told him he would never be a writer, and he proved them wrong, And so it's just, you just don't quit. You don't give up. That's the thing. You just, if you have a bad day, great. Go to bed, start over the next day.
That's awesome. Well, I'd love to hear your spin on how you do that. So can you share how you stay kind of relentless with asking and trying and positive attitude?
Yeah, well, I mean, everybody's human, so you're going to have those days where, you feel defeated. You're like, I don't know why I do this. This is exhausting. That because I've had many rejections. I don't know a writer who hasn't. I don't know a journalist who hasn't. I don't know an author who has not had rejection. That's just part of the makeup of pursuing that, dream or goal, or, of being published somewhere, whatever it is, whether it's a journalist or author, whichever path you take. So I read, one of the books I really adore is Stephen King's book on the craft of writing. And that's one of the things he starts out in the beginning of the book is, he started, now he has a sense of humor like nobody else I know. He puts up, when he started getting rejection letters, he literally put them up on the wall, and he had a whole wall full of rejections. I mean, it must have been, I don't think he tells a number, but it covered the wall. So that's a lot. And the fun and the irony of the story is he's making money off the book by talking about the rejection.
Who's laughing now?
Right. And it's, and so, but he does get a little serious, and he's like, you're going to feel defeated. That's part of it, but you have to keep going. You cannot let the world stop you from, the goal that you want to get to. It might take you a little while. And he does go into his life when he began to start, writing. I want to think the first book he wrote was Carrie, and maybe that may be inaccurate, but his very first, he talks about his very first book that he published, and he wrote it in a teeny tiny little room in his tiny apartment that he shared with his wife and two very small children. And so he's cramped up in this little room, I mean, can you imagine, we're talking about Stephen King, and they can barely afford their bills, like she works and he teaches a little bit, but he's got to find time to write too. And he's writing through the night, and you just, when you read it, you cannot believe what you're reading, because you don't, and he talks about going to the laundromat and, things like that, and having to pay for this, that, and the other, and, an old car he drives around that, breaks down or something to that effect. And so, everybody starts out at the same place. They don't, you have this, I guess, inaccurate perception of, well, I'll never, be like Stephen King. I'll never be that big, Well, they all started out the same place. It depends on how much you're willing to put in, and he put in a lot of hours. He lived and breathed writing. And so that's a really good book I would recommend to anyone who wants to pursue writing in any area. It'll inspire you beyond, I just picked up thinking I'll get some, little pointers of advice. Oh, no, no, no. You get a whole life story. Be prepared. Um, so, and they, one of the things that happened to me when I began um, my writing adventure, actually right before I started writing for the Hernando County newspaper, which is called the Hernando Sun, is I had read the book called Convicted by Mark Tagg and Andrew Collins and Jamal McGee. And it's not a super popular book, but if you are reading books on the wrongfully convicted, you'll probably know the book. The only reason I knew about the book is because I watched the CBS evening news special on it. And it's basically, in a nutshell, it's about a wrongfully convicted man who is a crooked cop. Okay. And the crooked cop is white. The wrongfully convicted man is black. So there's a little racial, element to it. But they get on there, and the crooked cop is Andrew Collins, and he to convict Jamal McGee, and they're best friends. Mm. So you're kind of looking through the screen going, what? Why would you be best friends with somebody who put you in prison? so it immediately got my attention when I saw the news segment. And so about a year after that, after I saw it on the news, they published the book. And Mark Tagg, who's a New York Times bestseller, he helped them write it. And so I emailed Mark Tagg after I read the book. And this was not something I had ever done. I've never emailed authors before, but something told me that, well, see what happens. The worst that can happen is you don't get a response. Mm-hmm. And so I emailed him, and within 24 hours, he responded, which my jaw pretty much was on the floor when I was reading his response, because it was a pretty lengthy response. And he said, and I was interested in writing my own memoir on various things. And he said, you know what? He's like, you could hire somebody like me to help you. It's expensive. He's like, but not that we couldn't do it, but what I would recommend to you is to establish yourself as a writer yourself and see where that takes you. And so I said, okay. And I started brainstorming, like, how do I do that? And so I just started, kind of looking around, who needs writers, who needs, and I literally sent the Hernando County newspaper a one-liner email. That was it, one line. And I said, hey, if you need any, extra, writers, just let me know. That's all I sent. I didn't send anything else. And so I never dreamed they'd respond, And so she responds within a week. She said, yeah, we need some writers. We need, what do you want to write about? What do you mean, what do I want to write about? What do you need me to write about? And I said, I like feel-good stories, that I know a lot of people don't like that. They like more of the drama, political thing. And she goes, no, we need some feel-good stories. So let's bring you on board and see what you can do with it. And so that's, again, that whole interesting, adventure. I didn't know how long it would last. I didn't know. I still write for the Hernando Sun, and that was back in January. That was only January 2019. So it's not been that long ago, but I've saved, a lot of stories, like the papers that I've done. And so that's stacked pretty high. but it's fun. It's something that you enjoy, and you meet lots of interesting people and lots of people you never dreamed you'd meet, or talk to or interview. So, yeah.
Are there any myths about journalism that you'd like to dispel?
Before I became a journalist or for the newspaper, I'm called a reporter. Um, I the irony of that is that I didn't have a good I say a positive perspective on a reporter. You think of newspaper reporter in the media. Oh, stay away from them because you never know what they're going to print or say. And well, not all of them are like that. It's kind of we put this little cloud of, I don't want to say judgment or perspective or whatever you want to use that. There are journalists and reporters who seek out the truth, or that's what they're interested in, But it's real easy to, with today's society to kind of get that adapt to that myth of, oh, all reporters are bad. They're not, they're not good.
Well, it's also nice to hear that you like, reporting feel good stories, because I feel like there's a good balance and a need for that.
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, I think every human likes some sort of level of drama. That's why we go to the movies. That's why we love Netflix, But there's also a need for inspiration. If you go back to, like we were talking about The Blind Side a little bit earlier, the film that came out into 10 years ago. I mean, how that movie did at the box office was phenomenal. Mm-hmm. And so because it was so inspirational. So I think there is a need for feel-good stories and inspiration for people to feel motivated to, continue that inspiration in the world. So.
And then I'd love to know more about Leanne's interview. But before I ask, did you both go to University of Alabama?
Did she go to University of Alabama?
Yeah.
No, she went to Southern Miss.
Oh, she was Southern Miss. Yeah.
Miss. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
sorry.
Yeah, just like the movie. That's actually true. She, they went to college in Mississippi. So, but I have a lot of friends, and my husband actually went to college in Mississippi. Now he went to Mississippi State, but I'm very familiar with, I don't know what you call it, like, Southeastern, conference. Mm-hmm. It's a big thing. You get Southerners going on, football, and it never ends.
Well, we grew up outside of Philadelphia, so I thought the Big Ten Network was really awesome. And then I moved down here. I'm like, oh, this is football.
Yeah.
Like, oh, there's another level.
Yeah.
So Jess, tell us more about the interview. What did you learn from Luanne, and how did that, experience go with interviewing her?
Oh, well, like I said earlier, I was a bit, you can't help but be starstruck, I couldn't believe that she, agreed to the interview. But she's very down to earth, that, and you're told that, but to experience it was, I felt like I was just talking to another, I want to say woman from the South, but she has an accent. So, you're just like your neighbor down the street, you just, she's up for any types of questions, but she's also very forthcoming. She's is not one to sugarcoat or beat around the bush, but she's also very, respectable and, gentle in her delivery. So she, her main focus is on being an advocate for foster care children, or children who are in unfortunate situations and who need guidance and help and, proper, I don't want to say proper, that's the wrong word, but, homes that are safe for them and where they can excel, so she, what I loved most about the interview was that, not only did she provide me with a lot of information to use for the article, and I was, the whole purpose of the article was to connect it to, Walt Disney World and the Mary Poppins attraction. But most of the time, that's not what was talked about. Like maybe, I don't know, an eighth of the conversation was about that. And but the rest of the conversation was about inspiration, about her experience, being on, being part of filming The Blind Side, helping them with all the parts and stuff. And she's very, what do I say? Well, she didn't have a problem with the word opinionated, but she speaks her mind.
Mm-hmm.
So, that's just the way it is. And and just like, and that is depicted in the film. It is Leanne's way, or she will listen. She will listen to your view, but she will also voice her own. So she, but that's what makes her a strong woman, and that's the take-home message from that was, you have to be strong and persistent to get things done, and that's completely accurate. You do. You can't just be lazy or not have a goal or multiple goals to succeed. So but that interview was definitely life-changing for me, not because I particularly spoke to a celebrity, so to say, but it humanized her, more so for me. I'm just as guilty as anybody else that you put someone like that on a pedestal, but an interview experience like that humanizes them and puts them on the same level as everybody else, and and it kind of brings home the message of, well, anybody, if they're willing to, they can be their own form of inspiration. Whatever life kind of throws at you, it's not necessarily what kind of life you have, it's what you do with it. And so that just so happens to be what she did with it. And somebody thought it was, interesting enough to put in a book, and the book got picked up by the right people and read by the right people, who decided we need to make a movie. And and the book is read quite differently than the film. It wasn't really a book geared towards a feel-good message. It was more of a football and so somebody with an interesting perspective said this would make a good Hollywood film, and they were right. And then everything else kind of fell into place. So over time.
I find it totally fascinating. And so how much preparation did you do for the interview? Had you already read the book? Did you read the book because you were going to have the interview?
I have the book. I read the book, but my habit is I do have a set of questions that I start out with. I usually about 10 to 15 questions, and that's not a lot. It doesn't sound like a lot, but when you begin an interview with someone's story or a personal topic, the interview takes a life of its own. And so I found that if you try to control the interview too much, you're not going to get that profound story to tell. So you have to allow it to grow as you're talking, as you're interviewing, because then you kind of end up in places that you didn't predict, and that's what makes the story. Your reader doesn't predict how it ends, and you didn't predict how that interview was going to go, and that's what that's the creation that comes to be in the end, if that makes sense.
It does, because I feel like the role is to uncover the story, not to just tell what's kind of at the surface level. So even helping them through good questions, uncovering the story is a great way of looking at it.
Yeah.
Jess, what I love about your conversation is you come from a very, you present it so simply that, like, first of all, just asking, like, just reach out to somebody on Instagram. It doesn't matter, who they are, who they may be, or how they'll respond. And you don't even, you just kind of do it effortlessly. So I love that. And then when you're having the actual interviews, just asking, like, not being hesitant to asking questions to uncover the story. So we've been saying we just need some standard questions. And it wasn't until you were saying, like, I've got my standard list of questions, and then you just allow the question to flow. Like, we really probably should do that, Allison. Jess, do you have any favorite questions that you ask? Like, say the conversations gets to a point where you're like, all right, I gotta move on. What's like kind of a go-to question you like using?
Well, go-to questions that usually spark some interest or spark conversation rather is, I find that everybody wants to be asked about who they are, where they come from. And so if we're talking about a specific topic and we get stuck and there's this roadblock and nobody's talking, then I kind of say, well, where are you from? Where'd you grow up? And then the wheels start, really, dialing up, because everybody was born somewhere. Mm-hmm. Everybody was, grew up somewhere. Now some people, granted, may not have a super positive childhood, but they're going to tell you where they were born. They're going to tell you something about that, what they think is the most valuable thing about their childhood and their upraising, or where they come from. They may not have been raised by parents, maybe grandparents, maybe they grew up in the foster care system. I've met some that have, but they're going to highlight the people who had influence over them. So everybody's got a story to tell. So that usually gets the wheel going.
That's good. And Jess, that's an example of what I admire in you and your strength. You just, like, to me, my question was like, oh, what's a very deep, long-winded question you could ask that's your go-to question? And you're like, so like upbeat, like, so where are you from? And like, of course people will answer that, and they'll like get, there's usually 40 years worth of stories to tell, that you can.
Oh yeah. Yeah. The older you get. Yeah. Well, and I found that, if the person is, let's say I'm interviewing someone in their 60s or 70s or 80s, you're going to have a longer response.
Wait for it.
Yeah. You better have a lot of paper because you're going to be writing a lot.
When you go into an interview situation, not met the person before, it's brand new, do you have like a certain goal that you're trying to get? Like, how do you know when an interview is over? Let's just put it that way.
Well, if we have covered all the bases that I need to for the story topic at hand, and if I just get a feeling that, they've shared all they wanted to share, that I don't want to pry into things that they don't feel comfortable sharing. I don't push for that. There are some interviews I've seen and read where I can feel that the reporter or journalist is really pushing, and they're making the interviewee uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. And I don't participate in that practice. But usually if you make a lot of effort in providing a comfortable, conversation, then you usually can get more than you bargained for, So, but that's just my experience. You get the interesting stuff. You may not know what that is, to start off, but you'll know what it is when you end the conversation, when you end the interview. They will come up with something or say something, whether it's subconsciously or consciously, that will put a little, more flavor into the story, So, and then what I always do is I type up the interview, the article, and then I send it to them. they have for their approval, because I don't want to print something that's inaccurate, and so I let them, and there, most of the times there's just little minor changes, and then I send it off to be published. So, so it's not even when I've interviewed small town, folks about, I don't know, I went to a little small town festival of maybe 100 people in Brooksville one time. Never been, just, they were serving like really good chocolate covered strawberries. Okay. And I don't know who made these, but I mean, like, and they were only $1 a piece, and they needed to be far more expensive than that. But but I sat down at a bench, and I just was supposed to cover the little festival. And I sat down on a bench I had my 6-year-old with me. And I was just supposed to take a few pictures and, write about it. And a random stranger sat next to me, a man with his friend. And they sat down and asked if, they could sit beside us. I said, sure. I didn't know who he was. He didn't know who I was. And as we got, to talking over chocolate covered strawberries at a little old wooden bench, I learned that he had actually served on the Chamber of Commerce, I don't know, some 20 years back in Brooksville, had always been his home. He was born and raised there, moved off to a different state, came back for, to spend his retirement there. And so I titled the article, which took up a whole full page, in When You Meet a Stranger. That was the title.
That's good.
And so, because we all meet strangers every day of the week, every hour, depending on how, how often you walk around and that sort of thing. But, you never know it was somebody's story. And so I published his story. Now, granted, here's one thing I messed up in that one is I didn't know his phone number or email. So I couldn't email him the story. So I'm like, all right, so hopefully he's okay with this. And so I printed it, or it got published the next week. And he called the newspaper the next, after he read it. And he said, I just want y'all to, his, accent. He said, I just want y'all to pass along the message, Miss Williams. I really appreciate, the story that she put in there, about me, because he never expected it. It's not like I could notify him or anything. And so apparently his friends had read it and say, hey, buddy, you're in the newspaper. So, it was, but again, that's it's a feel good experience. So, so that's how it goes.
That's awesome. I love that. I do feel like one thing that's pretty cool about your role is you can just get curious about people, knowing that they have something in them to share that's worthy of sharing. Like everybody has something worthy of sharing, but it takes a person that has like a level of patience to kind of see, I bet you I can unpeel this onion and kind of go deeper.
Oh, yeah.
And then also the creative mind to kind of pull it out in a way that people are like, oh, that's a great story to hear.
Yeah, people, I have learned, I've probably learned more from them than they do me, because I'm just sitting there listening to them, and so I have, my appreciation for people from different walks of life has definitely grown an enormously. So, where you might have a certain opinion about, I don't know, the different cultures or, different types of people, once you learn about them and at a deeper level, you start to appreciate where they come from, why the culture does those things, and so it's just appreciation for various types of people,
And then as a writer, so I know you have the newspaper and then you also write some other stories. Are you actively seeking places for do you write a story and then try to publish it at different places, or do you actively seek people to ask you to write?
Either or, right now, I kind of do it as a side hobby rather than like a income. Okay. The joke among writers is none of us do this to pay the bills. But you know, because we always ask, okay, so what's your real job? Because we know this isn't it. Yeah, you got to have a passion for it, you know, and you got to have the patience, you know, like you said, to do it. Um, you know, but you know, I have learned more from writing, you know, stories about people than I ever expected to. You know, I'm inspired by them and hopefully pass on that inspiration, you know, to readers. So
That's awesome.
I think it was so much fun to talk about it, talk about writing. I know when you were talking about Stephen King and all the rejections and that, I was taught, it was drilled into my head to call them letters of declination. So they were not rejections, they were letters of declination, which sounds so much more fancy, right?
Yes.
You know, and then I know people who like set a goal, like if I don't have at least 20 rejections, I haven't done my job, you know, sending it out. So you're trying to like figure out a way to massage the whole aspect of writing and what it takes to become successful. But I think your journey has been, it's so inspiring just to hear that you've been able to meet these people and then bring their stories to life in a feel good way, because we all need to feel good. We all need to feel good, right?
Yes, I think it, you know, and kind of, you know, it's kind of a cliche conversation topic, but, you know, 2020 has been quite challenging for many, many people. And so I think it's important to, if you could be that, you know, just small voice or small reason that, you know, somebody continues to be motivated or inspired and don't, you know, they won't give up on pursuing what they want out of life. You know, don't let the, you know, coronavirus or effects of society, you know, deter you away from pursuing that. You know, I know it's hard now and it's really hard, but if you just don't give up, you know, just don't give up, because it's worth it to keep going, you know, even though, or, you know, just this may be a dead end, but don't let go of the goal, you know, don't let go of the dream completely, you know. It may be postponed, it may have to wait till, you know, later, but don't forget about it, because you know, you need to, you're going to accomplish it at some point, maybe not on your watch, but it, you know, just don't give up on it. So.
Well, I love this conversation, and I'm so grateful for your time and everything like that. And I appreciate other people that were on the phone as well. And just overall, my whole thought and hope, as we have like more journalists that, you know, enter the mix, is that we keep having more people like you that are like bringing like good stories or like things for us to talk about beyond the like, you know, 45-second tidbit of the terrible things that are going on. So Jess, thank you for your work. I appreciate you balancing us out.
It's been a pleasure.
To watch a live Tuesday at 2 program with Revel Coach, visit us at revelcoach.com. Until next time.